Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mildly Gothic. If you're new here, what I like to do is a variety of artsy things. And if you're not new, thanks for joining me again. Welcome back, lovely to see you again. So, this thing is gonna be in the background of my videos for a while until I do something else with this dress form or figure out where to put the costume itself. But if you haven't seen what that is, maybe I'll remember to link my playlist up there. And the question is, how on earth do I follow something like that? The answer is, I don't. Not really, at least in the same capacity, not with another cosplay kind of a thing. We are going to calm it down just a little bit and do something fun and cheap. Because while I love making the cosplays and stuff, this YouTube channel does not provide any monetary support to my endeavors, and therefore, I don't want to spend a whole lot every time I do a project. Also because I know not everyone has the resources to do something like that. And so maybe some of these cheaper, smaller projects are something that might inspire you to do something with what you already have. So I have a tendency to collect fake florals. I've done a few things with them. I've incorporated them into different special effects makeups. Insert pictures editing me if I remember. And I've also made myself a garland with them. I think fake florals are really fun if you know what to do with them. I also made a wreath for Christmas last year. And so in that same spirit, we're making another wreath. The only thing I purchased for this project was the $3 frame from Michaels. All of the other florals and materials I already had on hand. Now I know that fake florals are not inherently a cheap material, which is why this may not be attainable for everybody, but you can also make wreaths with a ton of different materials. I grew up making them with pine cones with my mom. I think we also made some out of seashells. You know, each wreath just kind of requires a different approach to the materials, but I'll walk you through how I made this one. And at some point, I know I go on a tangent about different kinds of wreaths and the thought process you should have when you are approaching creating one of your own. So just kind of a fun little lighthearted video of a simple craft, because not everything needs to be the biggest and boldest thing on the planet. And while I know the algorithm likes everything to be the biggest, boldest thing on the planet, that's just not super feasible. So if you like the slower, more mellow kind of video that isn't me spending 4.5 months on one project, then definitely give it a like, maybe subscribe to my channel, leave a comment down below, you know, supporting these kinds of videos, because I love making the small things just as much as I love making the big things. However, YouTube, the algorithm deity that be, does not. So I know this video probably isn't going to get nearly as much attention, but that's okay, because it's not about the attention, it's about the fun and joy of making the projects. So I sincerely hope you enjoy this little creative journey and that you'll subscribe and stick around to watch more. With all of that said, let's get to the project. So a quick overview of materials before I get started, because I'm still not sure what I'm doing. But I bought this, honestly, I think almost back in September, back in August. This wire frame from Michaels was literally only $3. So I was like, obviously, that sounds like something great. And so that means that's the only additional cost I have for this project, because the rest of this is fake florals I already have. I have a nasty tendency to just collect craft scraps, and these are left over from a variety of things. These are left over from a headdress project I made. You can actually see these are all actually put together. These are left over from a special effects makeup I did actually on this channel, turned myself into like a woodland nymph kind of a thing. These are left over from a garland that I made myself, also did on this channel. And actually, these were originally for the garland, and then I used them for the special effects makeup. As you can see, I still have a lot of them left over. Don't remember what these were for, but I have them already. This was the original skinny kind of fake garland that I'd made myself. And I bought some more luscious ones when I redid it, so I have all of this to use. And then I have some not on brand, but still own them, so we may find a use for them. Very Christmas items, because I made myself a Christmas wreath. So some of these, I don't know about the red baubles, and I don't know about the frosted baubles, but I think I could probably find a use for the silver baubles in this design, depending on how I lean with it. So, and then I've got some very much probably not going to be used hydrangeas. These ones just are a bit large and a bit more fake looking than some of the others. And I think I may have a few more fake flower stashes lying around. I gotta kind of figure it out. But the intention for this is to just make myself a wreath with what I have and add to my home decor. I also intend, so I'm hanging it, I have it sitting like this. I'm still deciding. I think I'm gonna go with the classic moon shape, and I'll have to figure out how to hang it up there. And then I want to do the very hippie, kitschy, I don't know, I think it's very pretty, of obviously I have a lot of beads and jewels and kind of more crystal looking things, and so I want to hang some of those and have some of that element going on of just like some really pretty drapery of jewels coming down along with the florals. So there is no plan other than I bought a very cheap wire frame, and I'm going to use only what I have because I want to see what I can do with what I have, because I think sometimes putting limitations on your crafts are a way to make them more interesting and more fun, and also not as expensive. So that's where we are, that's what we've got, and let's get started. This is the second time I filmed a video with garland that my phone just hasn't really wanted to record. So we're gonna do a little mini progress update after I showed you all the materials. So I took that large black garland and I removed all of these little tendril bits because I want to be able to individually put them at certain points. And I wove the large leaf tendril just around the frame in a general fashion. And so we have that. None of this is actually like really secured in quite yet. And that's kind of what's going to be coming next. So I have floral wire in silver. And so I'm going to be using that where I can, and hot glue where I can't use the floral wire, that is. And start kind of securing this in place. I've decided I'm going to have a center thing here, and it's going to branch off the side. So now I'm trying to figure out how I want to do said branchy bits and where I want all of these other little things to come from. So that is kind of where we are, and hopefully it works from here on out. The reason securing things with floral wire can be tricky is because it requires you to maintain placement and kind of tension when you take it from where you decided it looks good sitting up to flipping it upside down and then securing it in place. But that's what I decided to do for my main hydrangea sections. Is they were going to be my focal point and basically what I was basing everything else off of, so I used floral wire to secure it. I would also argue wire tends to be more secure in the long run because it is wrapped multiple times and it's typically secured just around the frame itself. I always try to prioritize wire over hot glue, except sometimes hot glue is just far, far easier to use. But basically, I just went through and secured down the center flowers before moving on to anything else. So I'm pretty sure all fake florals, and if not all of the most fake florals, actually come apart in smaller sections of just the flower and or leaf bits. The silver strands I wanted to use, I didn't think they actually separated, but it turns out they do. So I started with it as just one section until I realized I could kind of separate it apart and secure it as different things. But I kind of broke it into 3 sections, which ended up being the sections that separated, and wove it around and through all the way to the very end. I didn't need it to be super on top of everything. I just wanted it to add more to the texture, add more to the color, just be something else that was there, and try to have the ends, the very leaf ends, stick out at little bits and make sure those were nice little visible bits of silver. The way I approached the 2 different sides of this wreath was basically get one element figured out on one side of the wreath, get it secured, and then duplicate it on the other side. I figured it was going to be easier to have a fully secured reference to go look at instead of getting them both to be kind of what I like and then losing one side or the other in the process of flipping it back and forth to secure it. So I would do basically the bottom half, the section that was closest to me, and then flip it and do the other side. And I think that gave me a good balance and kind of an eye for what was going on. But once I had the silver section in, I then just started trying to place my other sections of my little texture details. Again, keeping in mind my focal point and slowly
branching out towards the ends. I didn't really want it to be heavy at the tips at all because I want to try to preserve that crescent shape, which naturally slims down as it approaches the points. One thing to keep in mind when you're filling out your wreath is look at it from multiple angles, primarily the sides. If you're hanging it on a wall, it's unlikely someone's going to see the top of it, but maybe they'll see the bottom, and they'll most likely get a passing glance at the sides. Because if you make sure that those side walls are filled in, you're also serving the front of the wreath, because now you're adding more depth there as well. But tracking the sides and making sure that there aren't any gaps there is just a really easy way to make sure that your wreath will be full all the way around. So we've got a little status update here. That half is not secured yet, but this half is, and I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's filling out nicely with a bunch of different textures. One of the last things I'm gonna do is I actually went and pulled off all of the little branch things because I think they will be better served if I can just kind of tuck them in at opportune spots and kind of like fill out the structure of the branch. The wreath. I've also been pulling off any leaves that are facing the back or like get really caught up underneath other ones and you can't really see them, because my plan is to use them to fill in little gaps like here where I can just tuck this leaf under and then glue it in place there more towards the side, and I think that just aesthetically will fill it in better than where they were placed earlier. So I've been, every so often I've pulled off a good number of them actually. So, but they will end up back on the wreath. They're just going to fill in some holes. I'm trying to make sure that I have an even number right now. I've got five of these little doodads left, which means I can put up to one more down here. So I'm debating putting another one going in this direction. I just don't know if that'll be too much because I kind of like that it gets wispy out towards the end, so that's still a possibility. And I might actually take this one off too because I think it would be better served if I placed a different one there. So I quite like that. But yeah, so the way that I've been attaching these is gingerly figuring out where I want it from the front and then standing it vertical so I can hot glue it from the back, and then waiting until that's set. That just seems to be the best way that this works without completely losing or disrupting absolutely everything. So, oh yeah, see, that's a much better leaf placement. So if I can get those two things coordinated there-ish. So yeah, I'm gonna build this side out, and then I'm going to do the other side, and then I'll probably do another check-in so you can see how that is all kind of laid out. And then I'm going to do the same thing with these once I get it sorted and just kind of stick them in and add that little extra texture and dimension. I think this is really fun right now. I mean, it's a little busy, but I really like the center of the hydrangea flowers kind of just wisping out on the sides. I think the silver is really fun and it kind of works with it well. And we'll see what I do as far as chains and stuff, because I do want to, from the top, and it's going to hang in this direction, I want to potentially hang some like crystals or charms, or even from the bottom. So we'll see how that goes. I don't have anything planned for that yet. I am just working on filling out this wreath section, and so I'll check back in when I've got the other side done. It's been just over an hour so far is how long it's taken me to get to this point. So not the worst, but also not the speediest thing in the world. So it's been very fun. It's been a minute since I've made a wreath or something with florals, and I am enjoying the challenge of just working with the pieces that I have to try to make something fun. So anyways, back to hot glue. So here we are, and it's almost done. I've actually attached most of these little branchy bits. I still have some of these filler leaves, and I do think I'm probably going to end up using all of these, I may add this, all of these sections as well as this branch, just because I have them and I want to use them, and I don't think one of these is really enough to be worth keeping. So while I've done a terrible job of showing really the process of how I made it, I want to talk a little bit about the thought process for placing the elements, because in my opinion, there's two really main kinds of wreaths. You have homogeneous wreaths and you have focal point wreaths.
Homogeneous wreaths, think of a lot of your ribbon wreaths, like where people tie the ribbons, or yarn wreaths, or really anything where, yes, there may be a tied ribbon on one piece, but the general content of the wreath is uniform across the circumference or surface of the wreath. This is what I would consider a focal point wreath, because there is a focal point and things then distribute out towards the other side. So if this was one of those traditional green fern Christmas wreaths, maybe it has a smattering of objects here, and then it's just the green for the rest of it. I'll try to put some examples on screen now. Homogeneous wreaths are really easy to think about. You basically want an even distribution of all of your elements across the wreath so that it looks homogeneous. That is not to say you can't put a big bow or have some center item to mark like either the top or bottom of the center of the wreath. I think that's perfectly fine and still fits within the spirit of a homogeneous wreath. It's just about the other elements of the distribution. For a focal point wreath, really, that's when you get to a little bit more of how you want to actually structure your elements. And so for this here, I used the blue hydrangea flowers as my focal point, and this wreath is very helpfully set out in an even manner. Typically wreaths have, and all of them should, these little rungs underneath, and they're at set points, and I would highly recommend using those as your reference points for distance across things. So here's my center one, and I tried to make sure that my two blue hydrangeas on either side were the same distance away, and that these blue pieces here were at the same point. It can really help you make sure that you keep things even on other side. And you can very much have asymmetrical focal point wreaths. They can just go in one direction. They can go in both directions. If you think of my wreath last year, I'd argue that one's a focal point wreath, but it's two directions and they go, in opposite directions. The whole point of a focal point wreath is you're gonna want some different textural elements. I'd say, and this can kind of go for all of them, but when you think about the elements that go into a wreath, there's one that's really important, and that's your base. What is the majority of it going to be? What is going to be the background across everything? Because if you think about it, if this was a full circle wreath, this black would probably be what continues up on the other side of this hoop. And so that would be my background or my base element. You typically want it to be something, so think of your typical green fern for most Christmas wreaths. I don't know if fern is the right word for that, but you know what I'm talking about, the sprucey, piney looking things. Your background element should be relatively neutral and capture by itself some of the vibe you want for the rest of the wreath. So I've got black and sparkles. To me, I think that pretty well captures the vibe of the rest of the wreath. Then you probably want, so you have your base element, then you want your primary focal object. For me, that's these hydrangeas. They're going to draw your eye in to the center. What do you want your primary focal element to be? My hydrangeas. And so notice they are not exclusive to the center. I have a few of them off to the side and they kind of help build out that shape. And once you have those two elements, and color theory kind of comes into play, and I might talk about that in a second. But once you have your base, once you have your focal point, you're looking at texture. And this is where color kind of comes into play. I've decided to stick with 3 colors here. You could go full rainbow, but whatever you do, try to keep in the same vibe. So for texture, I've got 2 black elements, one leafy, one spiky. And then in my blue elements, I've got little spiky, I've got these tiny little baubles, and these pull from a little bit of the blue, but notice these blue elements are also super dark, so they go with the black really well. And I've also got these little silver, and I've got 2 kinds of silver. I've got these silver little bubbles, and I've got these silver little tendrils. If you think about your elements, your additional elements, besides your base and besides your focal, you're considering color and texture. You want arguably colors that work well with your focal point. So purples would have worked really well for this. I mean, black, if you wanted to. I think purple, as far as what I'm going for, I would have stuck to blues and purples. I did consider, I have a whole nother hydrangea piece. I just decided not to use it because I thought it was a little bit too pale for what I wanted.
but all of your additional elements are hopefully things that kind of go well together and things that you can break apart. Don't be afraid. Something like this is still good for wreath making because most fake flowers pull apart into these smaller sections, because I did actually consider bringing these in, but I just thought that might have been a little too much because these green, this pale greenish purple, I didn't think went with this. I mean, I guess it goes. I don't know. I'm not sold on it. But you can also cut these down further. Elements that break into singles or doubles or just into smaller pieces like this are great because you can incorporate them all over the wreath and you're not stuck with this. So whenever you're looking, you want to make a wreath on your own. What are you looking for? Look in the store. All fake flowers come apart. You just want to see how and in what pieces. If you think this is a chunk you can work with, then go for it. But for example, let's say this didn't come apart. You could cut it with scissors, but it's not as easy to work with. So back to some semblance of structured rambles. Really, I think at a minimum, you need 3 elements for a wreath. All right, let's go 4. You need your base, and this is for a focal point wreath. You need your base, you need your focal element, and then you need 2 more elements. You need 1 texture element that is a similar color to your focal point, and you need 1 texture element that is a complementary color to your focal point. So that's kind of what you want to stick with, because I think it brings a little bit more interest to it to have something brighter that kind of complements the design and is cohesive. Bonus, textural elements that are the same as your base. That's a bonus. I don't think it's required, but I think it adds a lot to it. As a minimum, if you have those 4 things, you have a great starting point. And the nice thing is you can always add more to it later. You can literally always just kind of keep sticking things in, deciding if you like it, and taking them out if you don't. So that is the thought process, in my opinion, for how to make a focal point wreath. So I'm probably going to try to edit that down into something more coherent, but that's at least the way I would try to approach it if you've never made a wreath before. Something else to be said about how to construct this. So I did most of this with hot glue. And I like hot glue because it sets so incredibly quickly. You can decide where you want an element. So let's say I want this piece. Oh, that doesn't look glued in. So we'll look at this piece. So this little piece there, and I'm going to flip it over once it's stuck in. And then you basically just find a place on the underside where it will hold and stick. And you can hot glue it right there and get it nice and set. And it's quick and it's simple, and you don't really have to worry about it moving around from the front perspective. The only problem with hot glue is structural stability. Hot glue is not the most reliable. It is not the most effective glue in the world. That's why your best bet, and by default, you really should use floral wire. You can use these 2 things in tandem in one of 2 ways, kind of like how I did here, where I put the floral wire down first and then hot glue on top. Or what I'm probably about to do is everything's hot glued in place, and so I'm going to just add a little bit of some wire supports around it to make sure that this connection is not going anywhere. Because wrapping with floral wire can be a little bit annoying when the pieces are trying to move around all over the place. Things just aren't staying where you need them to. And so having at least 2 methods of securing stuff to the wreath is going to give you the best chance of longevity and survivability. Because the thing is, not only does this need to look good and stay together when hung stationary on a wall, if you're a kind of person who puts your decorations away, I say that because most of my decor that I make ends up staying up year round, but if you're the kind of person who puts your decor away, you need to make sure that this stuff will last in storage. And so that means however you wrap it, it gets compressed, it gets moved. However you store your pieces, you need to have enough faith in your method of securing things to know that it will last. Because the last thing I'm sure you want to do for whatever holiday you make a wreath for is deal with getting it all put together again in, fix it. You don't want to have to go through every single wreath that you've ever made and see if it's still held up. See if there's any pieces that need to be re-glued. That is not fun. Trust me, I have a wreath I got from a charity auction, and I actually genuinely have to do that. It's not stable, it's not secure, and so every Christmas I get to open it up and play the game of, did this wreath survive? And I've done a few little repair jobs on it over the years, and so it's gotten a lot better. But it's still annoying to know that when I pull it out, one of the things I'm gonna have to do is check it and make sure that it's okay. Which I do because I really like it and I wanna make sure that it lasts a long time. But that's my advice for securing it, is I would say have at least 2 methods of securing things stably. And this is why I would never sell a wreath that I make, is because I'm sure there's better ways to do this. However, I just do this for fun and I do it for myself. And so as long as I am happy with the way it is secured and the final result that it achieves, I think it's okay. I just want to offer my pieces of advice to you on what I've learned over the years. This is technically only my 2nd wreath, but it is my 4th fake floral garland. This garland actually, this base used to be, I had a different garland hanging up, which I'll try to remember to link the video for the new one that I made. New, it's still a little bit older, but it's newer than what this one was. Anyways, fake florals are really fun. They can feel a little daunting if you don't know what you're doing, especially if you don't realize they pull off into nice little tiny pieces. So yeah, that's what I would say as far as attaching it together. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a bunch of this wire to secure some of the more unsecure bits and actually hot glue a few more pieces on that I apparently just forgot about. And then I'll show you if I do anything else. So we've gone from fake florals to now jewelry. So I have a lot of things in front of me and I'm not entirely sure what I'm gonna use, but I really like the look of those wreaths that have crystals and stuff hanging down from them. And while I am not a crystal girly, meaning I do not possess a lot of crystals, what I do have is a large quantity of sea glass. Almost all of these, if not all of these pieces, were collected off the shore of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And I have a bunch of different fun shapes, including some just square ones. I have this piece that's already, the stone that's already kind of wrapped. And so all of these will need to be wire wrapped, which I will not be doing with this wire. I have nicer, thicker wire that I will do that with. And these are scales. Specifically, they're known as scale mail. I'm going to try to not make these make the sound because I don't quite like the sound. But I thought that some of these pieces could potentially be really interesting. Bleh. Whoa, that sound bothers me. Sorry if it bothers you. I thought some of these pieces could be really interesting if I layered the different scales, or maybe just used scales as accent pieces instead of the stones, because I like layering the scales and I have a bunch of different sizes and I think they're very pretty. So am I going to use everything that's in front of me? No, but I have it. I also have these. I don't know if these are the vibe because, oh, there's hair knotted in them. Lovely. Great thing for video. I don't know if I'm gonna put these in. I don't know if they're quite the vibe. I think they're very cool and very pretty. I just kind of like the more reflective, either see-through element or the shiny element. I think these might just be a little too opaque for what I want. If you can't see, this wreath is leaving glitter everywhere, but that's fine. So yeah, it's upside down right now. And then there's also a potential I do some interesting spider webbing stuff in the center. I've seen some really cool ones online, so might take some inspiration. But yeah, we're gonna get into the jewelry side of this. If you thought we were done, you were wrong.
So I started by wire wrapping the stones, and wire wrapping in general is a interesting and unique process, and part of the intricacies are unique to each stone. It also depends on the kind of wire you're using and the thickness, but in general, I tried to create a loop to hang the stone from, and then generally secure it in a way that both minimalized the amount of wire that would be visible to the front of the stone, but also ensured security of the stone so there would be absolutely no risk of falling out. I do not like using glue or any of similar just adhesive substances in my wire wrapping endeavors. The stone is never glued in, it is solely held in by the wire and gravity alone. So I did this for all of the stones that I possibly wanted to use for my wreath piece. And once that was done, I started working on the bead sections for each piece. While I am surprisingly pleased that most of this ended up in frame, there is a significant portion of wire wrapping and the strategy around it that I just did not think to include in this video, or just did not think to record. If you are interested in how to approach wire wrapping a stone in the future, definitely let me know in the comments down below, and I can see what I can do about making a dedicated video to that. But otherwise, wire wrapping any object is about conforming to the flow and the design of that piece, and what looks both the most elegant and beautiful against that piece, and what will also make it the most secure. So those are the main two things I took in mind when I was finishing up the wire wrapping process for the stones for this piece.
So I have wire wrapped a variety of my pieces, and I've done them in this blue wire that, yes, is not the highest quality wire. It's kind of hard to see, but it's probably an anodized aluminum. I don't know. I bought it at like Michael's. So you can see where I've manipulated it, that it's starting to show the silver underneath. That's fine to me. So what I'm going to do next, actually, because it'll help me in, I think, this whole endeavor, is I have a piece of the floral wire 4 times wrapped over, and I think I might fold it in half again and get 8. But I'm going to make a little hook that goes on the back of this thing, because when I hook it via a wreath hanger, I don't want the hook to have to go through any of the inside of the wreath. I want it to be able to sit outside of the wreath. So I am going to, is that gonna be big enough? It basically, I know most of the hooks, I'm pretty sure, are at least just over 1 inch wide. So I need just enough surface area, essentially, that I can get that amount of coverage, and I have to figure out what center is and how I want it to hang there. But essentially, I'm going to twist and hot glue this thing in place, and then this will be my little hanger.
So as far as figuring out the lengths for any of the chain sections for this, it was entirely all just vibes and aesthetic. I tried to figure out a general length for how long I wanted the chain section to be, and then cut it a slight bit shorter because I knew the jump rings that I was using to attach the chain to the wreath itself were a little bit large, and so they would account for some of the length of chain that I was cutting away. That is something you want to keep in mind. How are you attaching it to whatever your main thing is? Because if that is going to take up some length in itself, you want to take some length away from whatever your length is, whether that be chain or wire or whatever. So I took away some length of chain to account for how I was attaching it to the wreath itself. But I did that for both the chain in the center, and generally just approximated how long I wanted the length of chain on the bottom to be. The center chain was at minimum twice as long as the center chain into the wreath. That was my starting point, and I worked everything from there, and I think it worked out really well.
Okay, so I've mapped out, I decided I was trying to think about doing some different pieces. Unfortunately, I don't have enough of the beads that I did for the top one to replicate them, so I've decided to just do 2. I have these beads that are black on one side and this kind of really pretty shiny on the other. They don't go the best, but they primarily come off as black, so I'm not super concerned. I just literally don't have a lot of other beads in either this specific tone of blue, because a lot of the other ones I have are like this, which just aren't the right shade of blue. This is too bright of a turquoise blue. I also have a lot of things that go into the more purple category. So this is a really pretty, it's very hard to see, iridescent blue, but it tends to lean very purple and gold. So that doesn't work either. And I just totally put that back in the wrong spot. So it took me a little bit of time, and I have straight up actual black beads. I have them in squares and I have them in little rounds. These just weren't working. I can't tell you why. They just were not the vibe. And then the other problem is a lot of the silver I have is a very dark silver, or this very smoky quartz. These are so far away from the camera, you're not gonna be able to see them. It doesn't really matter. It's more of me rationalizing to myself that this is gonna work and be totally okay. Some beads I'm actually a little annoyed I can't use are these. These are stunning. However, these are basically teardrops. So the post for these goes horizontally across the top like this. And I just can't really think of a way to work them into this design in a manner that is not gonna make me have this take longer than it already is going to. So I have 5 pieces here, and I have some slight interesting things with the shapes because I can kind of do this either one of a few ways. Big center pointy and have them kind of done like that. They're going to be at different lengths. This is not the true length because I can't actually get the true length that I really want on the table. Or I could match these two up and put this as my center down here because I don't think that looks bad, because I have a problem kind of as soon as I start doing, like, see that? And I've put them off screen because I'm great. This just doesn't quite work to me. This piece as the center, just something's off balance here. So I actually think my favorite might be this, because I think it balances. You've got the 2 heavy pieces there, the 2 smaller pointy, and I know this one is smaller, but I don't know that that's a bad thing, and maybe I do the thing I was talking about and give it a little extra. I actually don't know that I like that. I did toy around with making this 7 because I will insert reference on screen if I remember. That had 7 pieces that basically had like these extra, and I don't know how to work them in a way that I like. So, because what that one had was basically you've got outer ones, and then imagine, so lines, and then the next 2 come down and are much longer, so those would be these, and then you get these inner ones, and if they're not all the same, it looks weird. I don't know that I like it. So I actually think I'm going to go with this, and we will see. I don't know that I want it to be like an even pendant. I do know kind of like a long center, or I could just do jagged, like, because I could just do 3. But I feel like that feels small, so I like this. But yeah, I gotta figure out some of the heights and things. So how these are gonna work is I have 1 of each of them, and I'm going to chain these together. I think probably with the jump rings to just add a little bit elegance to it. And the kind of plan is to alternate like which one's on top, which one's on bottom, and if I hate it, then they'll all be the same. So I think I'm going to attach all of these little doodads together, and then attach those to those, and then probably try to find a way to hang this on my wall or put it on the floor in a way where I can see the full length of things and figure it out from there. But yeah, we have most of these. I don't know where my looper tool went. I have a really handy dandy looper tool. Cannot find it to save my life, so I had to make all of these little loops by hand, which is really annoying. We can attempt a demo. So if we wanted to attempt a demo of how this works, basically if you were trying to make a loop at the end of this, it's not enough to just curl it in one direction, because if you do, you end up with something very off-center. That doesn't work. So you could just tilt that back in the other direction and you get something that's kind of good. My personal favorite is a weird little kind of mix of the two, where I tend to curl it about, I'd say, 180, so you end up with, I would call a classic candy cane, and then figure out right at the base, so you almost have your pliers matched up with the opposite end of your loop, and you want to pull it backwards, and then go ahead and close up your loop. I think it makes a lot nicer and a slightly more centered loop than the other one. So this one was folded all the way around and then folded backwards. Obviously you need to fold it a little bit more forwards, and there was my other method. That's a really rough explanation. The best advice is just go buy a looper on Amazon. They're pretty cheap and they work super, super well. But we've got all of these going, so yeah, I'm going to start attaching some little guys together. So I'm gonna have a great time editing this into the main video, but I have this hanging on a wall where I usually have a little face round, where I usually have a little round of Domino's face on it. I'm just debating the length of these chains right here. I'm thinking I may make this bottom one longer. I think something's a little off right now about, I think just the balance of it. So I think if I make this chain just a little bit longer, I think it might end up working out. But that is what we've got, and I think it is so incredibly pretty. I'm so freaking happy with it. We just definitely, I think I just got to adjust that one right there. So this shot doesn't look that much different, and it's because after having this on my wall for a few days, I decided to leave it up to kind of just see how I liked it. I honestly think it's fine. I'm not going to bother changing it or shifting the balance of things. I really kind of like this. It almost makes like a circle here with these pieces, and I think I don't know, I think that's kind of a fun element of the balance to this whole thing. So this is where I'm going to leave this project. Do you agree with me that this looks good? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. This project has been really, really fun, honestly super simple, and the result is something I'm really, really happy with. It's one of a kind, it is unique to me, and I can't wait to find it a permanent spot, because I do have something else that lives here normally, so this cannot be its permanent home. Just because it's something else I'm quite proud of. This is what usually hangs here. It's a very cute little thing of domino. I used to work at a studio that did these kinds of projects all the time, and so I did this as a demo and then got to take it home with me. But this is what usually hangs here, a cheesy little thing with the dog on it, so that is not where this is going to live forever, but I really, really like it. I think it's really pretty. It kind of has a lot of hot glue strands still hanging from it that I need to clean up, but that's fine. I think it's got a little bit of whimsy, it's got some fun, and overall, the bottom line is I'm really happy with it, and that's all that really matters. So if you've enjoyed watching the chaotic process of this, let me know in the comments down below. What do you think of the final product? Do you think I should have done this differently? I'm interested in any of all of your thoughts. I know this is not as big and grand, but I think this is just as fun. So definitely let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm repeating myself, but yeah, honestly, I think that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.